beautiful souls, and welcome back to another session of the Sanctuary. This is our space for reflection, growth, and connection. I'm your girl and guide, Mariah Miles, licensed therapist, ordained minister, and overall creative. And today marks our final episode of June. And oddly enough, it's our 27th episode, which, I come up with really random facts, but I think it's kind of interesting to think 27, I thought 27 Club. And for those of you who don't know what the 27 Club is, but it's this group of incredible artists who we lost too soon, like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, Jim Morrison, and Kurt Cobain. If I've forgotten any, go to my website and send me a message or hit me up on the gram at my_Mariah. But these artists, their legacies really remind us that life is both beautiful and fleeting. So as we celebrate our 27th session, let's embrace their spirit and dive into this exploration for today, which is all about reciprocal relationships. We're going to discuss how being flexible can help us navigate our journeys and open ourselves up to the opportunities that the universe has in store. And throughout this month, we've explored various practices, including our awareness practices, our safe place exercise. Last week, we did a mountain pose with a guided meditation. And today we get to jump into a mindful walking practice. But I believe each of these has helped us cultivate a deeper understanding of presence and how that impacts our lives. Last weekend was the summer solstice. And as we embrace this energy that continues to be around us, I'm thinking of how this is definitely a time of abundance and growth, right? And so I want to reflect a little bit on how we can continue to nurture and uplift relationships in this way and invite these unexpected blessings into our lives. And you all know, of course, we're still following along with my prompted journal, Busy Minds, Peaceful Hearts. So sit back, relax. It's time to tune in. Relationships create this dynamic exchange, right? This back and forth of support and understanding, where we both give and receive. And something about it kind of reminds us how we're meant to connect with one another, right? These really strong bonds, they really support us in our overall well-being. And I like to think how these connections can deepen our understanding of ourselves with the world around us, like so many new experiences offer. I recently worked with this client who felt a strong pull to this very specific path. And even though she recognized that there were other options that were available to her, something about it, she couldn't bring her mind away from the one option that she saw. And instead of pushing her to explore these other possibilities, I got really curious. What was holding her back? That was like the first thing that I was thinking, what is the resistance here? And it's really cool because we got to take a moment to sit with her fears. The fear of stepping into the unknown. And as we visualized other alternative, these other paths, but together, slowly she began to uncover what her mind had created to keep her feeling in this unease. I like when we get to these moments in therapy where we can recognize that the discomfort that she was feeling was often rooted in fear of the unfamiliar. Have any of you ever experienced that? I know I have. But this experience got me thinking about how we all have moments where we cling to what feels safe, even when there's so much more waiting beyond our comfort zones. Sometimes we just can't visualize it. If I can't visualize it, I can't see it, it can't exist. So I invite you to reflect on your own relationships. Are there connections in your life that feel reciprocal in the way that I have defined it? How do you engage with others in a way that fosters this mutual growth? And if you haven't experienced that, what are some fears that might be holding you back from opening yourself up to new possibilities? And of course, you might pause to reflect on this. You might literally pause this recording and sit with your thoughts or take out your journal. Because I love embracing vulnerability and being present. Because when we can do both, our interactions can create a sacred space for deeper connection. Sometimes there's something so important about somebody else witnessing us in this way. Because it's in these moments of openness that we often discover really deep, profound growth and understanding. I keep thinking about the summer solstice. How I was talking about abundance. It really reminds us to celebrate the connections that we share and consider how we can maybe invite more reciprocity, more openness into our lives. And maybe I think that way because when I think of the summer solstice, I think of expansion. I think of more time, more availability to connect. It's the opposite of winter when we're in our cocoon. We're out in the real world, and so it gives us more opportunities. Because each relationship is an opportunity to continue to learn and to grow, continuing to reveal these layers of ourselves that we may not have known existed. Man, I get so giddy about this. I feel like I could geek out for a while. I love the idea of life for me is these little lessons, right? That we get every time we connect with one another. It brings joy to my life, y'all. I've been thinking a lot about flexibility as well. When I'm thinking about reciprocal relationships, it also brings up flexibility. And they're not interchangeable, but something about it makes me feel like they move together in some way. And so that's why I kind of lump it into this essential part of our journey towards connection and growth, because I feel like life often presents us with these really unexpected twists, right? We think we're going one way, and then whoop, we turn, and it's like, you thought what? It ain't happening. But sometimes these surprises, again, bring us joy, while other times they might push us to adapt in ways we didn't foresee. And when I say push us to adapt, I mean we are kicking and screaming. There is no acceptance here. And that's when I see most of my clients. And others, they might be in the acceptance stage of life. But it's in that resistance where we create this dis-ease. We can't see past it. There's no vision. And when I reflect often, as I do, on how easy it is to cling to our plans, believing that they are the only way forward, because we're holding on too tightly to this specific outcome, I think we get stuck. I know I've felt stuck before, right? Like we're trying to fit some other shape in some other hole that just, dude, it's frustrating. I don't know what game that is, but have you seen like the toddlers? There's like this box and there's like these shapes on it, and they're trying to put all these different blocks into these different shapes until they can figure out. Some kids get really frustrated and some just walk away. Most of them get frustrated, yeah. But this is where those principles associated with Tantra come into play. And I think that many people think of Tantra in terms of sexuality, but it's really about embracing the fullness of life. This idea of cultivating deep connections with ourselves and the universe, or whatever you're calling it. Because Tantra invites us to be present and aware, which really naturally aligns with the idea of flexibility. Because when we approach life with an open heart, I feel like we can adapt and flow with these changes that come our way. It's about recognizing that life isn't just these series of rigid structures. Do you know what I mean? But it's really dynamic. I often get this vision in my head of like a river that's flowing. Maybe it's flowing fast in parts of our lives, or maybe it's still, right? But it's forever changing somewhere along the riverbed. And it's so easy for us to be holding on to not wanting to get swept up with the river. But it's inevitable. If you resist the river, you drown. At least that's the way my head sees it. I'm thinking about this like recent moment when I had this kind of last minute decision about a project. I think my mind kind of races through things. I always think of things all the different ways that it could be. And so then I sit with things a lot, right, until it feels just right for me. But if I got a lot going on, there has to be a point where I let go. And so I like that pausing and reflecting, right? Embracing that flexibility that can shift our perspective instead of resisting. You can't resist the river. I like to allow myself to be open to whatever might unfold, but there definitely is a point where we have to let go of the resistance. It's like we have to make a choice. I think in the moment of letting go, clarity emerges. I'm not sure which one comes first. Do we get the clarity and then let go, or do we let go and trust in something greater than us and the clarity comes? And maybe both and are true, right? Maybe it depends. But oftentimes for me, when I let go, it's like a weight has lifted. because new possibilities arrive, right? And I hadn't even considered them. These experiences always teach me that flexibility is about welcoming change, being open to new directions. I think we know one thing to be certain is all paths of the river lead to the ocean. Regardless, we will come back home. We can't stick to a predetermined path. We try, we really try. And I would love to know if anybody has stuck to their path and their plan that they have had since they were a wee child. And I want to know how it turned out for you. Please write to me. I will have you on this show. But I'm curious, what does flexibility look like in your life? Are there areas where you feel this sense of tension, this sense of rigidity, this sense of I'm stuck? I wonder how you might invite more flow into those spaces. Right? Because this space is about curiosity, isn't it? And I hope you continue to be curious about what's happening for you. Continue to embrace vulnerability, because it's important here. Every time we allow ourselves to be open in that way in our interactions, we continue to create that sacred space for those deeper connections. And for me, I think that that's why I'm pretty intentional that I might share my strengths and the things that I feel certain on that day that I might feel certain on. But I share my uncertainties with others too, because I think that it gives them a genuine understanding of me, who I am, how I feel, how I breathe, how I be. Yeah. Before we move on, I want to take a moment to just kind of address this important topic of cultural appropriation. I think that in our quest for growth and understanding, that it's really important to approach traditions of others with respect and mindfulness, because many people feel that borrowing from different cultures can sometimes lead to appropriation, right? And that can be true, especially when those cultures have been marginalized or disrespected, as many have been historically. I do feel like that is a valid concern. And it's essential for us to engage with other traditions in a really thoughtful manner. But I'm always curious, when is it okay to borrow from others? Because as an artist, I feel like that's what we do. We get inspired from one another when we create something else. And as a human, we do that too. But I believe it comes down to intention and respect, right? Because if we approach a tradition with an open heart, seeking to learn and understand instead of exploiting or commodifying, I think we're more likely to honor its origins, right? And coming from this reverence, this sense of reverence. And maybe I'm just saying this because I've had the privilege of learning from elders of various traditions who have encouraged sharing their teachings. They're inviting others to learn and to grow, often expressing there's this fear that their wisdom might be lost if it remains insular. So this sharing can be a way to preserve and honor those traditions, right? Fostering this sense of connection and continuity. But again, I think that the key is to engage with humility and this willingness to listen. And that is such a tricky thing, because I find that in my profession of, side note, I told one of my clients the other day I'm a space holder. And he was like, oh, really? Like, that's cool. I want to be a space holder. Anyways, I digress. So I was talking about how the key is to engage with humility and willingness, right? To be able to listen in that way. And I really do feel like that is really hard to navigate, because many people have not learned those skills. And so maybe first and foremost, we start with becoming these active listeners. I mean, that would change our connections with people in general. We can really start simple. But when we honor the roots of a practice and acknowledge its cultural significance, I think that we can create a space for genuine understanding and respect. I think that this allows us to continue to deepen our own spiritual journeys, right? While still celebrating, the richness of other diverse traditions. It really does make me think of our last session when I was talking about the sense of belonging. And it also kind of reminds me of, people might be like, oh, that's my brother from another mother, right? Like, we sometimes choose our families. Could this be something like that? I'm curious. But as we explore themes of flexibility and connection, I think it's like really important to remain mindful of those cultural contexts that we engage with. I'm also thinking that the more we learn from each other and we learn new practices and new ways of being and new ways of honoring the sacred divine, not only does that grow our own understanding of our spiritual practice, but that might have been a stepping point so that we can see something differently, have a new perspective. And maybe it's not a right fit for us, but we don't know unless we try it. But I want to reiterate, by approaching other traditions with that curiosity and respect, like deep reverence, I think that we can enrich our own experiences while continuing to honor the wisdom of those who came before us. Because that's really meaningful. As we continue to sit in the space of our spiritual lens, I wonder what it looks like through that lens, viewing our relationships and the practices that we continue to engage in. I wonder what it would be like to look beyond the surface. Do you know what I mean? Connect with maybe the deeper currents of our existence, beyond what we see on the outside. It's what creates those sacred threads that bind us together. At least for me. When we engage with these different traditions or spiritual practices, I think we're not only borrowing elements, we're opening ourselves to a deeper aspect of the human experience. Because embracing the unknown allows us to expand our understanding and really flow with the energy of life. When I move from that space, things feel different. I'm reflecting on our last session again because I spoke about how when we're born alone, with how we are born alone and we die alone. Do you remember when I said that? And how I spoke about the in-between, how we're seeking those little moments of magic, almost like little miracles that remind us of the divine energy within us. Because each relationship we cultivate serves as this mirror, as reflecting our truths back to us, right? Every interaction has this potential to illuminate these parts of ourselves that we might not fully recognize. Oh my gosh, and I hope that I don't recognize every single part of myself because it wouldn't be as fun. I like the element of surprise. But many spiritual teachings, especially those from Buddhism, really emphasize this interconnectedness of all beings. And I'm greatly inspired by Buddhism. I know I've talked about it before. And here I'm thinking about the concept of interbeing, right? That suggests that we exist in relation to one another, that our happiness is intertwined with the happiness of others. What? That kind of blows my mind. Our happiness is intertwined with the happiness of others. But this perspective encourages us to engage with each other as a whole, because we're complex beings. We're not just objects in each other's lives. There's more to us. But I think that that's the tricky part, because how do we truly connect with others in this way? It asks a lot of us. So here's what I think. I think it begins with, yep, you got it, the theme of the month, presence. Because being fully engaged and attentive in our interactions, when we listen deeply and not just hear words, we also get to sense the emotions and intentions behind them. Right? Do you get it now? Our happiness is intertwined with the happiness of others. So is our sadness and our anger and our love and our joy. Do you get it? But this requires us to let go of distractions, to bring our full selves into the moment, so that we can create that sacred space for deep connection. Because it's already there, we just have to tap into that energy. And so we circle back to embracing vulnerability. Because when we allow ourselves to be open and authentic, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like we're making a cake. We're creating the environment where true connection can flourish. It's in these moments of sharing where we expose our joys and our uncertainties that we find this connection, this human experience. I mean, because if we don't, then what? I know a lot of people these days, they want to isolate, they want to be solo. But do you really? Or are you just scared? So I want you to imagine approaching each relationship with a sense of curiosity. What if, instead of seeing someone as just a friend or a colleague or a family member, we recognize them as a whole, complex being, each with their own stories, their struggles, their dreams. It's like when you're a kid and you think your parents are the greatest superheroes of all time. And then you grow up and you start to realize, like, man, my parent is a human. They have faults. They're not perfect. This practice can be really challenging, especially with all of our limiting beliefs that often hold us back. If we didn't have to work for it, would it be as good? I don't know. But then I come back to the energy of the summer solstice that continues to carry that spirit of abundance with us. And I invite you to reflect on how you can cultivate a deeper sense of connection in your life. And I wonder what practices have been resonating with you lately. How you might honor the sacredness of your relationships. I really like the intention of embracing this spiritual lens, right? Because it invites us to see every interaction as an opportunity. How each moment holds the potential for transformation. Really kind of revealing all of these layers, so to speak, of ourselves that we didn't know existed. So we get that surprise. As long as we don't have an expectation that that is what is going to happen. Just let it be. Today's somatic practice is an exercise of mindful walking. So if you're able, I definitely invite you to come along for this journey. If you're listening in your car or in your bed, maybe you hit pause and you come back and join us when you have more time and space to engage in this way. But this exercise invites us to connect with our bodies and the world around us while cultivating a sense of presence. And so if you're willing and able, I invite you to find a quiet and safe enough area where you can walk. Maybe this is a park, a garden, it could even be a quiet room. And I invite you just to take a moment to stand still. Allow yourself to tune into your breath. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth. Allowing yourself just to notice what it feels like to breathe in this way. And as you breathe, perhaps you set a really simple intention for your practice today. It could be as simple as I choose to be present. Allowing the intention to guide you as you prepare to walk. And when you're ready, I invite you to gently begin at a slow and comfortable pace. One foot and then the other. Focusing on the sensations in your feet as they make contact with the ground. Noticing how your weight shifts from one foot to the other with each step. As you walk, try to synchronize your breath with your steps. You might inhale for 3 steps and exhale for the next 3. This rhythm can help anchor you in the present moment. And if your mind begins to wander, gently bring your focus back to the sensations of walking, the sights and sounds all around you. Each time you notice your thoughts are drifting, might be an opportunity to practice returning to the moment. And after a few minutes, perhaps you find a comfortable spot to pause, allowing yourself to stand still for a moment, allowing yourself to take a few deep breaths. Just noticing what it feels like in this way. And if it feels right, feel free to pause and continue your walk. Just noticing any sensations that arise. And try to see if you can be as present as possible. And if you're ready to continue on, I invite you to do so. And as always, feel free to pause so that you can tune in and perhaps write in your journal. As we wrap up today's session, I want to share one of my favorite poems that really resonates with me. I first heard it about a decade or so ago in one of my teacher trainings for yoga. And it's by the poet Kabir. And he says, "Are you looking for me? I am in the next seat. My shoulder is against yours. You will not find me in the stupas, not in Indian shrine rooms, nor in synagogues, nor cathedrals, not in masses, nor kirtans, not in legs winding around your own neck, nor in eating nothing but vegetables. When you really look for me, you will see me instantly. You will find me in the tiniest house of time." Kabir says, "Student, tell me, what is God?" He is in the breath inside the breath. I think that for me, this poem really encapsulates this essence of connection, presence, divinity that resides in the spaces that we share with one another. Kabir invites us to look beyond this external, right? Urging us to recognize how profound relationships can really mirror our own truths. I feel like it captures this sense of intimacy with the sacred. It really reminds us that the divine can be found in the simplest moments, right? Not in just these grand gestures or these lofty ideals. And it's in this invitation to turn inward that for me it suggests that our connection doesn't have to be perfect. It just really asks us to be present, to embrace our experiences, to open our hearts to one another. And as we continue to move through our lives, I invite you to carry this message with you. Perhaps through each interaction. And maybe you'll remember that it's an opportunity to continue to connect more deeply, right? To embrace that vulnerability, to continue to discover the magic that lies within us and around us. Thank you, y'all, for being here, for showing up for yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a session over here at this sanctuary. And share this with a friend. You never know who might need to hear this. Remember, you can connect with me over on IG at my_Mariah. And you can also check out my website, mariahmilestherapy.com, and you can go over to the podcast link and send in an inquiry, a thought, a question, something that you want to share that we might bring up over here on the podcast. And remember that each breath is a reminder for us Because if we remember that our bodies have this innate wisdom, that beautiful ability to heal itself, but the reminder is that we heal best in community. The divine in me recognizes the divine in you. Peace, y'all. While this podcast may feel like a therapeutic conversation, it is important to note that it is not a substitute for professional therapy or mental health. The information shared here is intended solely for educational purposes and should not be used as a replacement for personalized mental health care. Although I am a therapist, I'm not acting as your therapist in this setting. If you are in need of support, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional.